Breaking news! The Miami Dolphins are in the midst of some crucial offseason discussions, and there's a lot to analyze regarding potential team moves. Let's get right to it because this is one of those updates you don't want to miss. Before we get started, hit the like button if you agree that Calais Campbell should return to the Dolphins. If you can, comment like this, Calais back. There's some hot news going around behind the scenes about the possibility of signing veteran Brandon Scherff and the decision to bring back Calais Campbell. These are the types of moves that could shape the future of this franchise, so let's talk about what's happening and what it could mean for the Dolphins going forward. Let's start with the NFL Draft, which is always one of the most exciting times of the year for any football fan. The Dolphins currently have 10 draft picks, including selections in every round except the 6th. 3 of those picks come in the 7th round, 2 in the 5th, 2 in the 4th, and then 1 in each of the first 3 rounds. The big question is whether Miami should use some of those picks to move up. While the idea of jumping from number 13 to the top may 10th not be realistic, a different scenario could be in play. Moving back to the first round to get a second first-round selection. Think about it. Miami currently holds the 48th overall pick in the second round, and moving that up into the late first could be a smart move. The difference between a first-round and second-round pick isn't just about draft positioning, it's about contract structure. First-round picks come with a built-in fifth-year option, which means teams can keep those players for an extra year at a controlled cost before having to negotiate a big extension. We've seen how that plays out with guys like Jevon Holland, who, if he had been taken in the first round instead of the second, would still be on his rookie deal with the team. Meanwhile, players like Jalen Phillips benefit from that extra year of team control, giving Miami more financial flexibility. So what would it cost for the Dolphins to move up? Using draft value charts, one possible scenario would be trading their 48th overall pick along with their third-round pick, number 98, and possibly a future third-rounder in 2026. That's a price worth considering if a key prospect starts slipping down the board. And speaking of prospects, some of the names Miami could target in this scenario include safety Nick Emanwari from South Carolina, Malachi Starks from Georgia, defensive lineman Dorless and Kenneth Grant from Oregon and Michigan, and defensive lineman Gray Zeller from North Dakota State. If any of these guys are still available in the 25 to 28 range, it might make sense for Miami to pull the trigger and go up to get them. Now, shifting gears to free agency, one of the biggest remaining gaps on the roster is the left guard position. That's where Brandon Scherff comes into play. Miami's offense is largely set. Tua is locked in at quarterback, Zach Wilson is his backup, and the running back room is in good shape with Alexander Mattison and Jalen Wright. At receiver, you've got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Westbrook Akine, and Malik Washington, while tight ends include Pharaoh Brown, Julian Hill, and Jonnu Smith. The offensive line is almost complete. Patrick Paul at left tackle, Aaron Brewer at center, James Daniels at right guard, and Austin Jackson at right tackle. But the one missing piece? Left guard. Scherff, the veteran from the Jacksonville Jaguars, is one of the top names being floated around as a potential solution. He's a proven player with solid pass blocking skills, though there are questions about how well he fits Miami's offensive scheme, which requires linemen to move well in space. Still, last season he allowed 0 sacks, committed just 2 penalties, and was graded in the mid-70s as a pass blocker. If Miami wants to solidify the offensive line and provide better protection for Tua, bringing in a veteran like Scherff, especially on a 1-year deal, makes a ton of sense. If Scherff isn't the guy, there are other options, including Shaq Mason, Will Hernandez, and Dalton Reisner. But one thing seems clear. Miami would benefit from a veteran presence at left guard rather than relying on a rookie, with Patrick Paul expected to take over at left tackle in his first full-time season as a starter. Pairing him with an experienced player at left guard would help stabilize that side of the line and prevent defenses from exploiting any weaknesses. And that brings us to the final big discussion. Should the Dolphins bring back Calais Campbell? This one seems like a no-brainer. Campbell was a massive contributor last season, playing in all 17 games and providing a huge veteran presence on the defensive line. At 36, turning 37, he still produced at a high level, recording 5 sacks and 12 tackles for loss. He also used his size, standing at 6 feet 6 inches, to bat down passes at the line of scrimmage, something that has always been a part of his game. Miami's defensive line needs stability, especially after bringing back Benito Jones at nose tackle. But they still need someone reliable to play opposite Zach Sealer. Campbell was that guy last year, and there's no reason he shouldn't be that guy again, unless he decides to retire. If he doesn't, Chris Greer should do everything possible to keep him in a Dolphins uniform. Bringing him back wouldn't just help on the field, it would allow Miami to take a more relaxed approach to the draft, knowing they don't have to reach for a defensive lineman early. Instead, they could focus on the best player available, whether that's a cornerback, safety, or offensive lineman. So what do you think, Dolphins fans? If Miami had the chance to move back into the first round for the price of a third-round pick, would you make that move? Do you think Brandon Scherff should be the final piece of the offensive line, or would you rather see someone else step in at left guard? And most importantly, should the Dolphins bring back Calais Campbell for another season? Let us know in the comments. Let's talk about it. When it comes to building a contender, these types of decisions can make or break a season. The Dolphins have been aggressive in the past, and if they truly believe in competing for a championship, they have to make smart moves, not just flashy ones. Let's break it down further, because there's a lot at stake here. If Miami does trade back into the first round, who is the ideal prospect? This isn't just about getting another player. It's about filling a need with someone who can contribute right away. One position that jumps out is safety. If the Dolphins are serious about solidifying their secondary, Malachi Starks out of Georgia or Nick Emenwari from South Carolina could be game changers. Starks, for example, has been a dynamic playmaker at Georgia and is projected to go anywhere from the mid-first to early second round. If he starts to slip, that's the kind of player Miami could justify trading up for. On the defensive line, the two names in play, Brandon Dorlus from Oregon and Kenneth Grant from Michigan, are both intriguing options. Grant is a powerful presence in the trenches, and Miami needs someone who can clog up the interior and complement Sealer. If Campbell comes back, adding a guy like Grant or Dorlus will allow Miami to rotate its defensive linemen effectively and keep the unit fresh throughout the season. And let's not forget about offensive line depth. Bray Zeller from North Dakota State isn't a name that's been talked about a lot, but he could be the kind of player Miami targets if they prioritize protecting Tua. The reality is, if the Dolphins don't land a veteran like Scherff, they'll need to address guard in the draft. Would a trade-up make sense for a high-upside lineman? Maybe. But there are still questions about whether Miami sees left guard as a top priority or if they believe they can get by with a bargain signing. Now, let's talk about another key factor here, cap space. Every move the Dolphins make has to be viewed through the lens of how it impacts their ability to keep key players in the future. Re-signing Calais Campbell, for example, might not break the bank, but does that prevent them from making other moves? Miami's front office has done a good job managing contracts, but they'll need to be careful about long-term flexibility. Another thing to consider, if the Dolphins don't trade up, who are they targeting at number 13? There's been speculation that Miami could go for a cornerback, which makes sense given the uncertainty at the position. Could they be eyeing someone like Quinyon Mitchell or Terrion Arnold? Or maybe they go offensive line early and take a top tackle? So what's the verdict, Dolphins fans? Do you want to see Miami trade back into the first round, or should they stay put and take the best player available? Is Brandon Scherff the answer at left guard, or should Miami look elsewhere? And finally, should Chris Grier do everything possible to bring back Calais Campbell? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's get this conversation going.